Hello and welcome to Let's Dance with Charlotte Elizabeth. That's me. So, this podcast is going to cover everything from dance, health, fitness. I will include how to prepare for your first dance for your wedding or using that kind of scenario for special occasions. There will be planning hen parties and ideas for planning hen parties, but the main focus of this podcast is dance. I am the owner of Feel the Beats UK, and I'm going to get you all moving. So let's get on with the show. Hello, and welcome to the first official episode of Let's Dance with Charlotte Elizabeth. So today's episode is an introduction to me, because if you have stumbled across this podcast, you likely don't know who I am or where I've come from. So I'm going to give you my story. So I have danced since I could walk. I am pretty much the ABBA song, Thank You for the Music, danced all my life, and pretty much since the age of 4. I went and did a dance degree, was injured on day 1, and that stems back from something that happened when I was 14. So I was probably going through a bit of a growth spurt. I was doing a lot of ballet. I worked at that time, the ballet teacher that I was going to, God rest her soul, some of her methods were a little bit ancient, but you couldn't tell her no, because at that time she was in her 80s. So fair play to her for still going, but she hadn't moved with the times. So a lot of the terminology didn't help. But when I was 14, my hips suddenly started not letting me turn out, which as a dancer, and particularly a ballet dancer, it's quite crucial. So I was in a lot of pain. My dad at the time was also having a bit of a hip issue. He's not a dancer, but he was having a hip issue, and ironically, it was the same hip. And the physio that he was seeing at the time just told him to get me to do the exercises that he was doing, because it wasn't going to harm. To avoid me having to go and spend money on a physio, kind of, that was potentially unnecessary. So did the exercises, and not that it disappeared, but it made it a lot easier. So if you are into your health and fitness, you will know the number 4 stretch. So I can't really demonstrate this within a podcast, but imagine you're lying on your front, you have one leg straight and the other leg bent. So in this case, it was my left hip. So I had my left hip bent, kind of at a 45-ish degree angle, kind of the foot resting around my knee, so that if you looked at an aerial view, it looked like the number 4, hence why it's called the 4 stretch. So I did that, and that kind of seemed to help. So we didn't think too much of it until I start my dance degree. So this was when I was 14, started my dance degree obviously at 18, so 4 years later. And doing a simple routine within our contemporary technique class that was using kind of stretches, but you'd kind of flow into it. And we did, so this was the cross sits. So if you've ever sat on the floor, bent one leg under, and then you've bent the other one on top, and then you hug that top leg. I'm sorry if you're not watching this on YouTube, you probably can't visualize, but Google cross sit stretch, and you'll see what I mean. But you've almost like wrapped around yourself. So as we did that stretch, I was then in an excruciating agony, and we'd done some other things kind of within the week, and kind of the rotation of my hip was just cramping, like my leg would just cramp, and I was in pain. So I was like, right, this isn't right. Went to the doctors, explained everything. Yeah, something's not right in the rotation of your hip. Take ibuprofen and rest. Okay. Referred me for physio. The physio eventually came through, who couldn't do anything because she couldn't work out what the problem was. Referred me to go and get MRIs, but didn't even give me any stretches or things that I could do in the meantime. Just kept saying there's something wrong with your hip. And I'm like, I know there's something wrong with my hip. That's why I've come to you as the hip expert to help me at least alleviate the pain. Like, I was struggling to walk at the time. My house that I lived in as a first year student was on a hill. That was painful, literally painful. So go back to the doctors, try and get an MRI appointment. Appointment comes through, and then it gets cancelled. They've postponed it. Now, at the time, I'm not driving at uni. And my MRI appointment was in Chippenham and I was at uni in Bath. So I was going to have to get buses and taxis and all sorts. Well, no, my parents being my parents were going to come down and help me, but the appointment got cancelled. As I said at the beginning, my dad had had a similar hip issue. So we also went and spoke to the professor that my dad went to, and this is private. Now, we were in a fortunate position to be able to do this. I know not everyone has that kind of financial, it's just not available to them. So I massively appreciate and understand that that's a privilege, that I didn't just have to rely on the NHS that back in 2012 was still struggling. And even the physio had recommended Professor Griffin. And I was like, okay, alarm bells ringing here because that's who my dad had seen. So my dad, the year as I'm going to uni, had the whole ligament taken out of his hip because it was shattered. So I knew I was going to be in safe hands, but I was hoping it wasn't going to be an operation. I was really hoping I didn't need an operation because I'm just starting to learn and develop for my career. Like, what effect is this going to have? So we book an appointment to see him, do the MRIs, the CT scans, the lateral x-rays, the works. And he decides he wants to try a steroid injection because he also understood that as an 18-year-old, I think I was 19 by the time of this appointment, I don't want to do an operation if I don't have to. And a lot of his work is looking at young girls and their hips who suddenly, when they hit 18, 19, so they've done all of their growth spurt pretty much, suddenly get hip issues and how you can avoid the operation. So we tried the steroid injection and we thought, okay, this could work. You'd obviously have to have more than one, but the initial one seemed to work. No, because I went back to my dance class at uni and I'm in agony. The effects weren't going to last long enough for me. I'd be needing them every 3 days, and that isn't feasible and it's not recommended. So I rang my parents and tell them we need to book that operation. So confirmed with uni when we officially finished, because obviously first years you usually finish end of May, early June. We'd already got a summer holiday booked in. So we knew it was a 12-week recovery because we'd already discussed, if this doesn't work, what is the route? And like I say, my dad had had the same operation, so we knew what was to come because we needed to work out that I'd be back to start my second year. So we booked the operation. So we'd had our summer holiday, came back, had the operation. 12 weeks to the day of that op, I returned to my second year. And that's when I had to rethink my career. So the result of my hip was that the ligament was detached by about 2 centimeters from the femur head. So the agony I was in was any rotation was catching that ligament. That was the excruciating pain I was feeling. So my operation was to put that back on my femur head. Touch wood. So that was 2013. So touch wood, 12 years later, it's still attached. In fact, it's pretty much 12 years to the day of this episode going out. Yeah, and we're not far off. So yeah, 12 years to the day, that ligament is still attached. Now, I do still have the occasional ick and niggle and stuff, but compared to the agony I was in, absolutely nothing. So return to my second year of uni. And I'm going to kind of fast forward now because we're kind of 10 minutes in. And you don't need my whole life story in this one episode because that's not what you've come for. But I need you to understand where I've come from as the expert to talk about all things dance. I'm not just someone that loves dance. I live and breathe it, like literally live and breathe it. So from there, kind of back into second year, still have to be careful, but I'm back to dancing and going, okay, let's rethink my career. So I began looking at kind of teaching and going, okay, I clearly can't be a performer because my body won't take it. It can perform, but it's the rehearsal process. It will struggle. It was struggling in just class. When we were working on intense performances, I would struggle. So I knew it wasn't really a career option anymore. Sad as that may be, it wasn't telling me that I couldn't dance. So there was a day we got an email from our arts department kind of thing about going and dancing in South Africa with their first professional dance company who use dance to educate their local communities on social issues. So for them, it's things like teenage pregnancy, drugs, AIDS, anything that is regularly in the news. A lot that comes up for them is passion killing, so domestic violence. English, whilst it's their national language, they don't all speak it. So there's that communication that unfortunately they have a lot of domestic violence. So I was successful in getting one of 6 places, international places, mind, to go and dance with them. So August 2014, so the end of my second year, I went and spent a month out in Namibia and South Africa with them, dancing, teaching, going out with their communities. And it lit something in me, teaching those kind of less fortunate in this situation, but just teaching and seeing the development and the change, whilst also getting to perform. I was getting the best of both worlds and I loved it. Didn't really want to come home, but I came home and I was like, oh my God, I love it. That's what I want to do. So I started to go, right, okay, my progression route after my final year is going to be teaching. So I started looking at PGCE. But I also contacted the company and said, what do you do about consistency and continuity? Because your dancers have developed in this month of having outsiders come in. But then where do they further develop? So I put myself forward to go back again. So I based my dissertation on that experience and that kind of thing, because actually passion killing happens in the UK. We just don't know about it as much as we do. In Namibia, it's kind of a regular occurrence in their news, whereas we know domestic violence happens here. It's not that we turn a blind eye to it, it just doesn't come into the newspaper as much as it does out there. So I did my final year. I worked with a youth dance company. So the Bath, very posh then, the Bath and North East Somerset Youth Dance Company, or as we called it, BYDC. So I worked with them alongside my final year. There was a moment I was in charge for 3 weeks, had to take them down to Bournemouth for a youth dance platform, run their lessons, had other guest teachers coming in because Fleur, who owns it and still runs it to this day, to be fair, slight different variation in format and name and stuff, but kind of is still running it. She was off in China for a 3-week freelance contract, so I was in charge. It was great. And that really furthered my spark of this is what I want to do. Particularly for those that really love it. They wanted to be there. So yeah, I was progressing, went back to graduated, got a 2-1, went and did Namibia again, started the teaching degree, and then find that the government are changing the whole curriculum and dance will no longer be part of the curriculum because apparently there's no jobs. Oh, government, you were so short-sighted. Because they were forgetting the transferable skills. They were forgetting that not everyone is, in inverted commas, academic. There is a lot of academic within dance. It's not just moving. There was a lot of essays, a lot of essays in my degree. So yeah, the government was very short-sighted. So 2016, I've graduated as a teacher in further education, so 16 plus, and I can't get a job because of lack of experience. No one was seeing Namibia as experience of teaching. No one was seeing BYDC as experience of teaching. They were just seeing, yeah, you're newly qualified, but actually you don't have any experience. I'm a newly qualified. How do I get that experience without a job? So, and then life as I knew it flipped 360. My home life was no longer the home life I had grown up with, as my parents were then going through divorce. And that's as much as I'm going to say on the matter on this very public platform. You will see snippets on my social media about it. But my parents had a divorce at the time when I had then decided to go freelance myself. The time when I felt I needed the most support. So that was an interesting kind of time. So that what led me into my, what is now are we coming up 9? Yeah, we're coming up to 9 years of a dance career. So that 18-year-old that was panicking they wouldn't have a dance career, 9 years later, they're still in it. It hasn't been plain sailing. It has been an absolute roller coaster. So I started out doing first dances for weddings, hen parties, after school clubs. I was doing care home sessions. I was doing holiday workshops. You name it, I was doing it. I was also working at the time. So I was supply teaching. I was doing hospitality. So I was a waitress in a hotel. I was doing bar work in the local rugby club. And I think there was a point when I had like 4 contracts. So for employed contracts and trying to build the freelance, and it was like, this is ridiculous. Something's got to give. So gradually I started kind of reducing some of a lot of them were 0 hour contracts. So I started reducing some of them and just having a job. So a hospitality and the freelance, trying to build it. I'd started my own dance school. So I'd got a dance school that didn't do exams, was just for fun. I'd got a deaf student, so I was learning sign language. The kids were learning sign language. They were all developing. And I just kept looking at it. I was like, something's just not, it's not really growing. It's not really developing. And I knew that at some point the area I was in was not going to be an area I'd be living in. And my partner was progressing his career, and I knew that at some point I'd need to make the switch. So now was the perfect time. So this is 2019. You know what's coming. So this is 2019. So I decide to stop everything I'm currently doing in the kind of Rugby Leamington area and move over to Worcestershire and start my roots then. So I just moved in with the other half. I'd got a hospitality job in the area. I was getting ready to launch everything in the Worcestershire area, set my roots, and 2020 hit. And it closed overnight. I couldn't get any funding because I was one of those businesses who was running at a loss. You can't get funding on a business running at a loss. I just about got a bounce back loan. I say just, I like literally just got a bounce back loan. And lots of family around me were going through lots of health challenges. I had a brother-in-law who died of cancer at the beginning of that period. My mum was going through stuff as well as being the carer for my nan. My auntie was going through cancer treatment. My uncle was going through cancer treatment. My father-in-law was going through cancer treatment. There was just everything left, right, and center. And it was like, well, what do you want to hit at me, world? Because it's just coming. It's just coming. I couldn't go online with my business. I wasn't established enough for people to still use me. I found network marketing and that kind of bought a little bit. I was still doing hospitality, but then obviously that wasn't working. So then 2021, I went and got a normal job. I went and got a 9 to 5 office job for me to have any chance of rebuilding this dance business that I was so determined to make work, and I really wanted to make. It's what I wanted to do. It's new. I knew it's what I was meant to do. If you're spiritual woo, I knew it was my thing. Working 9 to 5 is not my thing. I do it. I enjoy it, but that's not what I meant to do. I meant to do this. I hope you can hear it in my voice, and certainly if you're watching on YouTube, you will know that this is my thing. And along the way, I was trying to build a business. So I was doing just the first dances and the hen parties by then because I couldn't do the schools and everything. So Big Occasion Dance had kind of been formed, but that still wasn't really developing anywhere. So, and I'd got this idea of building out a wedding planner. I'd already got a recommended supplier list. So people had encouraged me and said, well, Charlotte, you're a wedding planner. Why don't you just become a wedding planner? So the end of 23, I became a wedding planner. And then it still just wasn't growing anywhere. So more recently, so as the wedding planning became the business became Big Occasion Events, and it still wasn't growing. I wasn't really happy. I didn't really like talking about my business. If anyone outside of the business world asked me how's it going, I was like, yeah, it's all right. Because I didn't want to talk about it because one, they don't understand what it's like. And two, I was ashamed that for how long I'd been going, I'd got nothing really to show for it. I'd got loads of experience and different, but tangibly, I'd got a hobby and a very expensive hobby at that. So most recently, I have scrapped the planning and I've gone back to my dance. Hence, Feel the Beats with Charlotte Elizabeth. And for the first time in 9 years, I am putting myself front and center to the business. I've always hid behind a name. I didn't want my name in the business. I had a bit of an identity crisis. But I am now front and center of this business. It is me you are buying, whether you are coming to me for your first dance Whether you're coming to me for a hen party, whether you come to me for the fitness classes that are going to be coming further down the line, whether you come to me um, for whatever it is that I come and bring in, it's me you are buying. So I am front and center of this and I am owning it. Feel the Beats is me. I'm dancing and oh my God, I feel so much better. I'm sleeping better. Everyone's noticed that I seem much more happy. And that's what I'm here for. So this is my podcast relaunch. I have waffled for nearly 20 minutes giving you my backstory. So if you have stayed with me to the end, I applaud you because I have waffled. But I needed you to understand where I've come from, that I'm not just someone that enjoys dance. This is literally my life. And that sounds cliche, but it literally is. So the rest of these podcast episodes, they will cover anything and everything to do with dance, the things that I am up to. I will have guests come in and do interviews, and they might be things to do with confidence, to do with anxiety, to do with sleep, different health areas, other people that are within the fitness industry and kind of their journeys and their tips and expertise. Mental health will come into it, mindset, because those COVID years, there were multiple times where my partner had to make me get out of the house because I could have happily stayed at home and not gone anywhere. And he'd realized by the end of a week, you haven't left the house in like over a week. We're getting out and we're going for a walk. So it was a really good time for me in that sense. And it brought us closer together because we were very ships in the night, weren't always, and obviously we were then living together. We kind of, okay, let's make this work. He is my absolute rock and cheerleader. Um, so yeah, it was a challenging time, but it was the make or break for us in that sense, and for me, well, actually, can I make this work? So I'm in a different full-time job. So I used to work for a fence panel company, and it's not as sexy as it sounds, I promise. Fence panels are really boring. And I went through a phase of I could not go anywhere without trying to work out whose fence panel someone had, because that's how intense the job kind of got. But I realized I wasn't really a salesperson. I wasn't enjoying it. So I now work for a special needs toy company, which is ironic because part of my dance school, I used to run special needs dance classes. They may come back later, further down the line somewhere. Who knows? And it's a breath of fresh air working for a family business. You hear different conversations, it makes you think more, and you're appreciated for what you do. Um, and it's helped me bring my spark back of actually planning isn't me. I'm just highly organized because I'm borderline dyslexic. Um, I'm not a planner like the typical wedding planner. I used to joke I was Frank from Father of the Bride, but I'm really not. I'm just organized and I can pick out things that people haven't seen. But dance is me, dance is so me. And so I hope you stay with me for the rest of these episodes. They are not going to be as long as this one, I promise, or I hope. So yeah, get moving. Dance is good for you. And I'm here to help you feel the beat. So I'll catch you on the next episode.